Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. We're going to start with a look back here at what the month of July gave us. And the first map is going to be a total precipitation rank by climate district. Now remember, this is out of 129 years, so when you see the colors kind of tucked away right in through here, like we do throughout much of North Carolina, this would overall look like a near normal month compared to that 129 years worth of data. Where we've seen some drought development has been a little bit farther to our north, right in through here. Parts of Virginia, through the Appalachian Mountains into West Virginia, that's been a region that's been quite dry. Elsewhere around the country, just a couple of things to point out. This was an area that was pretty poorly forecast, earlier in the month. Forecast was to be quite wet, and this includes a lot of cotton, wheat, corn, soybeans, a lot of different crops grown right here in parts of Kansas, Oklahoma, and into Nebraska. The upper Midwest has also been very, very dry as well. And the fires we've seen in the West and in the Pacific Northwest have just been spreading smoke throughout much of North America. The southwestern monsoon has been quite strong. So that kind of gives you your update here across the U.S. But what I want to do is I want to take a look at how well the models predicted this. Now, watch. This was the forecast that was released on July the 1st for the month of July. And now you start to see a few things. We were forecast to be near normal, maybe a little bit drier than normal. And when it kind of was all said and done, our precipitation was pretty close to average. So we would call this a successful forecast. The upper Midwest was well predicted to be dry, as was the Canadian Prairie. But the models did not pick up on this precipitation pattern well, and to be honest, really completely missed the strength of the southwestern monsoon. So it's just good to do some evaluation of the model performance. Let's do the same thing for temperatures. Again, this particular summer continues to favor much above average temperatures tucked away in the west. And no, we don't expect it to stay that way here as we go into the near-term forecast. I'll explain in a few moments. But overall, we were slightly cooler than normal across much of North Carolina. So that's where we rank. Now, did the models pick up on that? Well, this was the forecast. They did well on seeing the heat in the west and the cooler than normal conditions across the southern plains that did extend over toward the mid-Atlantic, but we were biased a bit too warm in the forecast models here. So, given that's the setup, let's now just take a look at a couple other variables. The first is going to be soil moisture, and we're going to look at change here. So the first map shows us what things look like on July the 1st. This would be 16-inch soil moisture, and it is in terms of percent of normal. We had already started to see drier pockets in western North Carolina extending into Virginia. But as the month wore on and we got now into the beginning of August, this is how this map has changed. So you see this is July 1. This is now August the 2nd. We still have pockets of drier conditions right in and around the central part of the state, but it's much drier farther to the north here. So it's just a critical graph to take a closer look at. Now, outside of this area, just notice parts of northern Iowa, so a lot of this, primarily for those corn and soybean growers, into Minnesota, the Red River Valley of the North, and then pockets here in the Central Plains have been very, very dry. But I'll make one comment about what the crop conditions look like in Iowa, because I toured through there last week. And overall, early morning heavy dews have kept moisture on this crop, and there was some rains over the weekend that spread right in through this area. So just something to keep an eye on for you corn and soybean growers. Now, quickly turn our attention to tropical activity. July was a very benign month in terms of tropical activity. We had Elsa. Elsa came right in through here. But outside of that, nothing new really developed across the Atlantic or in the Caribbean or in the Gulf. We are expecting that to change, and even though the National Hurricane Center is saying, well, through the next 5 days, at least through their 2 a.m. update today, they were not calling for any new development. I think we need to be keeping an eye on some of the convection coming off of the west coast of Africa. We start to see right in through here better chances of thunderstorm development. There's still some dry and dusty air to the north, but I want to watch this very carefully. Main reason why, the MJO was moved back over toward phase 1 and phase 2. Now what that means is we expect to have better rising motion in the atmosphere. If you just kind of take a look here, kind of in this area. Now again, this is time, so August 2nd through August 17th. And the shading that you see in the color here, you want to line up over the top of the geographical area in the map below. So that means Africa. We're going to have a reset of the MJO. Now the significance of that, if I just kind of scroll down here, would be, let's just click on this one. For the next 5 days, we no longer have the suppressing upper atmospheric flow over this section of the world. All right. We certainly don't have it here where we are expecting tropical cyclones to develop in the East Pacific, but remember they head off in this direction. So what I'm attempting to say here is that the atmosphere is becoming more conducive to tropical development. And as we slide through the first week of August, we start to see that the European model is increasing the probability of having tropical cyclone development, especially at the end of this week coming off of Africa. So I just want to keep an eye on this right now. There's nothing of newsworthy to report in terms of tropical development, but we need to just watch this very carefully. Okay, from there, let's just take a look at the last about 24 hours or so in terms of precipitation. So this is a radar animation. We did have some storms that came through on Sunday. You'll watch them again right here that moved really kind of west to east across the state and then have exited and are now offshore here. Very strong southwestern monsoonal push. You'll see it at the beginning of the animation again. And the frontal boundary that's about to sag in this area from southern Texas to North Carolina is going to be a source of nearly constant rainfall throughout much of this week. We can see by looking at some of our lightning data here that most of the storms are off the coast early this morning. But let's get in here and see where this forecast is going. Because you look at the last 3 days, which is what's shown here, what you've got coming into this area here was the beginning of a broader front that's going to set up shop right in this area over the next several days. So I'll get those drawings off there so you can get a good glimpse at what the last 72 hours of precip have looked like. And from there, this is what the jet stream is currently doing. Let's let this reset here. There we go. And now you can see it. Large ridge runs up the western part of the United States, and the flow comes weakly over the top of it like this, and then dives down into this trough. Now that trough, we know colder air comes into troughs, but the strongest ascent in the atmosphere runs along the fastest winds coming out of the base of that trough. So why I share this with you is because as we go through much of this week, let me just step you back. Let's blow this up and then step back. There it is. There's that trough Monday into Tuesday. See it just diving in here? But you'll notice as I get out here toward Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, where I began this animation, we see a little shortwave curling up through the mid-Atlantic here by the end of the week. And that then eventually heads on off toward the northeast. But look at what comes in right behind it. I know it doesn't look like much, but that subtle feature right there is going to continue to bring in the rainfall for us. And I'm going to show you exactly what that does by looking next at this map. Now, if we get this resized right, this is looking at total accumulated precipitation through the next 7 days. And as you notice, as you get closer and closer to the coast, we're going to see increased chances of rainfall. There are places right in through here that over the next 7 days we'll see between 1 and 3 inches of rainfall. And some places, possibly as you get closer to the coast, much higher than that. And again, that's that stalled out boundary fed on moisture running around the Bermuda High. And we're just going to continue to lift the air in this region until we produce that low right in through this area late this week that's going to head on off to the north and east. So this is likely going to be the wettest spot in the country here as we look across both North and South Carolina. Outside of that, there is a little shortwave that will be coming through the northern plains late this week. Could initiate storms over some very dry fields in the northern plains and upper Midwest. Just something else to be thinking about. But cooler, drier weather is occupying much of the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, into the Northeast. And that cooler weather will extend pretty far to the south. I'll show it to you in just a few seconds here. But first, how about we just watch the European model's prediction of how this is all going to go down. So throughout Monday, we see that we're drier on Monday. So here we are 1 p.m. on Monday afternoon, getting into the evening. Now let's go to Tuesday. Tuesday begins several days of chances of rainfall. Higher pressure firmly in place here in the Midwest, and the frontal boundary sitting right in through this area. That's Tuesday morning, afternoon, and evening. And now as we go from there into the overnight hours on Tuesday into Wednesday morning, afternoon, and evening, you just see a lot of cloud cover, a lot of precipitation. A lot of it will be scattered, but locally heavy. And we're going to wait till we get past Wednesday evening into Thursday morning, afternoon, and evening that we start to see some low pressure developing here. Now, generally speaking, widespread clouds and rain, but I said we're going to watch toward the end of the week. There it is. The first low takes on off toward the North Atlantic, the Northeast, eventually to North Atlantic. But then watch. Remember how there was a second wave? There's now Friday night into Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, and evening, we continue to put down more rain along our eastern side of the state. The western side of the state could be drier this weekend. So then getting into next week, there we go. A little bit drier pattern into next week. We'll take a closer look at that in just a few moments, but I want to put this all together for us. First map, total precipitation anomalies through the next 7 days. So we could be anywhere between a half of an inch to some locations over 2.5 inches wetter than normal. And right now, nearly all of the models suggest that there'll be a gradient west to east across the state, with the wettest here right along the east coast. From there, let's now see where this pattern's going to go before I show you that those week 2 graphics. Now, this is something called the PNA, Pacific North American Pattern. And here's the general idea. When its values are high, so well above average, there's a big ridge in the western United States. When the values go below average, that ridge turns into a trough in the western United States. So what this means is, while there's this big ridge here for the next 5 to 7 days in the west, we're going to be seeing all the heat staying west. But then we're going to watch this open up and move to the east before going back into a more weekly positive PNA. Now, what does all that mean? Well, I can show it to you by animating out the troughs and ridges. So look, here's Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. See, there's generally high pressure and big ridges sitting here, and a trough sitting over the Ohio Valley, which we're getting the influence of here in North Carolina. That's why we're getting all that rising motion. But as we get into the weekend, this is now Friday, Saturday. Do you see what happened? The flow of the atmosphere switched up, and now this trough dives in, and we get weaker flow across the rest of the U.S. That's why, for the most part, North Carolina goes into a drier weekend. If it's wet, it's only going to be along the coast. Now, that trough then comes right across the northern plains, and we get into next week, and we find that the United States is being flanked by day 10 and 11 by a ridge on the west coast that redevelops and a ridge on the east, and the trough sneaks in between. Now, why I kind of point out these details is to show you that the precipitation patterns are going to respond accordingly. When looking only at week 2, that's going to tend to be drier for us in North Carolina, because as the trough dives down in between, it's going to initiate a lot of rainfall in through this corridor, not so much along the Gulf Coast or along the East Coast. But remember, out in week 2, I'm also going to be watching the tropics. No hint of development just yet in the GFS, but we're going to watch it anyway. Here again is the European model. So remember, trough came in, it gets replaced by another ridge here, and the flow comes over the top of it by day 10, and we're flanked by 2 ridges. So does the European say the same thing about the precipitation patterns? It does. We have a drier go of it here getting into week 2 compared to this next week. So if I could summarize that real quick, lots of chances of rain this week, wettest closer to the coast. Next week, as this pattern evolves and the jet stream changes over the northwest, that is going to change our precipitation patterns into week 2. And as you see here, we're favoring near normal to drier than normal conditions. All right, that's it kind of all wrapped up. What else is going on? Well, this is our all hazards weather map. And while we've gotten rid of all those excessive heat watches and warnings in through here, we now see a lot of air quality issues that are directly to our west in the central part of the United States. If I just take you back, take a look at this. Let's go back to last night's sunset. You can see that there's our storms coming through, but look at all of the smoke that was coming out of the storms, the fires that are here in Northern California, Oregon, Washington, and also into British Columbia, and then just coming right into that broader trough across the eastern part of the country. So we continue to deal with air quality issues. And this animation shows us that that smoke is still quite present throughout the next couple of days, and it will at times produce some very hazy skies across North Carolina, especially today. Now, what are those temperatures going to do? So let's kind of finish this up by a discussion about temperature. Well, with all that rainfall, you can expect, watch Monday into Tuesday. You might have a high in Raleigh on Tuesday in the low 70s. So there's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I went kind of fast because you saw that all week long we're going to have cloud cover, cooler weather, and daily chances of rain. But as we noticed into the weekend, we start to see the drying pattern come in and the temperatures rebounding back toward normal. So that's what we can expect this week. As we get out there and just look exclusively at day 5 through 10, well, what you now notice is, remember, This is what the jet stream pattern is going to do for most of day 5 through 10. And that's why we have the cooler weather ending after this weekend. And then as we get out there to day 10 through 15, now the pattern just progresses. The ridge is here, the trough is there, and there's the second ridge. So ridge 1, ridge 2, and we therefore see into week 2 not only drier conditions, but warmer conditions. Now, at the beginning of this video, I shared with you some of the long-range forecasts from a month ago and their performance. At this point, I have such low confidence in the forecast for the next month. I don't want to show it to cloud our own judgment of what's going on here. What I want to tell you is this. We see that atmospheric momentum built throughout much of July and has fallen back off again. And what I notice is that right in through here, extending initially from the tropics but migrating a bit farther to the north, is a lowering of atmospheric momentum in the northern hemisphere jet stream. Now, why I think this is critical is that overall we're seeing momentum pulled back out of the atmosphere as we continue to watch this La Nina develop. And we're starting to see cooler waters emerging in this particular area. But take note of how very warm the ocean is here, and also extending into this area in the Gulf of Alaska. You then see that our main development region for hurricane development here is also warm as well. And that's probably the biggest reason as to why I'm not trusting any of the long-range precipitation forecasts, because they won't capture the tropical development. They can't. They're not designed to. So I'll watch that all, and I'll report back to you next week. And if I have a better hint as to what that, let's call it mid-August to mid-September pattern is going to look like, we'll get into a good discussion about it, okay? I really appreciate your attention. I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you again next Monday. Thanks.